balance this. You guys are all a part of something huge. As Ron always says, this is an idea, the idea of liberty, and its time has come. So I'm very glad to see everyone out here in numbers that we have. This is incredible. I want to thank the people who have put this thing together, Jason Hensley and Drew Manning. You guys have done an incredible job, and y'all really deserve a lot of credit for this. The YAL Youth for Ron Paul, the Youth for Ron Paul chapter at UTSA has done incredible things, and it's just an honor to have worked with them for so long and to see them be able to put together a great event like this as well. So thank you all. So I'm honored to be standing here, about to introduce a guy who you all know so well. Yes, like all of you, he's a man who has influenced all of our lives to an immeasurable degree. I can say for myself, I was once lost back in the Bush years. I considered myself a Republican, but I felt hopelessly lost when someone would come up and ask me, why are we in so many wars? Why do we have so much government spending? Why is our debt so high? I honestly can tell you, I did not know how to answer that question. I became confused and indifferent, as I had no principle to guide my political understanding. And the saying goes, Ron Paul cured my apathy. As I studied his message more and more, that saying became even more true for me every single time I picked up one of his books. I finally gained an understanding about the world as I realized that there is a right way for society to act, and that one thing must be true, that liberty is universal for all individuals. To exercise one's human rights in any manner a person chooses, so long as it does not interfere with the rights of others, is a beautiful thing. It is the heart of peace. It is the heart of all of us, every human. Dr. Paul opened my eyes to this concept, as he did millions of others. And it is my pleasure to welcome you, the man who consistently has never voted to raise taxes, never voted for an unbalanced budget, never voted for a federal restriction on gun ownership, never voted for a congressional pay raise, and never taken government-paid junkets. And he has never voted to increase the size of the executive branch. On top of all of that, he returns a portion of his congressional salary to the U.S. Treasury every year. What congressman does that? A family man of a 55-year marriage. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm proud to introduce to you Dr. Ron Paul.
good news because they're claiming, you know, the campaign's over, when are you going to drop out? They say, yeah, that's what I say too. I'm glad you agree. But today they had a Rasmussen poll that came out, and lo and behold, Romney's not doing badly. But it might be reflecting, you know, that the president's not doing so well. and they came out tied. They were 50-50, but they used my name, which they don't do very often. You know, sometimes they think we don't exist. They did that, and we win by 1 point over the president.
Yeah. Woo-hoo.
That we don't exist, that we don't have a campaign, nobody's interested. And the other day there was some headline says, "Where's Ron Paul? Where is he gone?" And then somebody went and put one of these collages together. I don't know, maybe you've seen this on the internet. They took about 8 pictures of crowds like this in bigger ones across the country in the Northeast and California and Texas. Where's the media been? That's what really happened. But I really have to say, you know, to do this, you have to have a pretty thick skin. I have a pretty thick skin, you know. But today I read something, they really hurt my feelings. And, you know, it takes a lot of hurt to my feelings. And they said, not only is his campaign's gone, Ron Paul's shrinking. He's disappearing. He said that he used to be 6 foot tall, and now he's only 5'7". But he shrunk up, there's nothing left to him, he shriveled away, just like his campaign. Well, now I don't do a whole lot of bragging, but let me tell you, I weigh exactly what I weighed when I was in high school and wrestled 185 pounds.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I'm coming to the conclusion that sometimes the media is biased. Do you ever think that could be possible? But like we say, you can't stop a message whose time has come. No matter what happens, you're going to hear from us. And of course, this message is very clear and it's very necessary. The people are responding. Exactly what will happen in the campaign, nobody knows. How many people in the last week or 2 days ago who write about politics constantly on the air, constantly about politics? How many times did you hear a prediction that Santorum was going to drop out? Nobody predicted that. Things change rather rapidly. So it would really surprise me tomorrow. It would shock the nation if Romney drops out tomorrow, wouldn't it be? No, we don't know the future, but we do know what can happen if we don't do a job to change people's minds. And that's what we're involved in. We're involved in not only running to win and have an influence, but we really want to convert people into having some beliefs and convictions and understanding about what true liberty is all about. And that's where we're winning, let me tell you. Gandhi had talked about this because he struggled for a long time. He says, for a long time, anybody wants to change things, you're going to be ignored. There's no doubt about it. But then they'll have to recognize you to a degree, then they're going to start laughing at you. And then after they laugh at you a bit, then if you still get under their skin, they might even start to attack you. And but he says, it's then is when we win.
Yeah. Yes.
No, there's no doubt that we are winning the hearts and minds of the people, and the media people will all of a sudden jump at this and say, oh, that means you were never serious. You were never running to win, and you were just running for ideas. And I said, well, some people can't quite comprehend this, but you know, it's quite possible that you can run to win and still believe in something.
Yeah!
Oh.
Woo!
And that's obviously what I did at the congressional level. You know, the truth is I was a pessimist about ever winning an election to Congress, but the response was favorable, and I didn't have to change my ways. I believed that if the seat in Congress meant anything, I had to be re-elected on those terms that I ran on, and therefore the voting record was critical. And lo and behold, the people who knew me best endorsed these views. Now a few more people are getting to know what we're talking about, and they're endorsing these views. You know, and we're not talking about a couple hundred or a couple thousand, even a couple 100,000. I think we're talking now about millions of people. And one thing wonderful about a true revolution, it's not a partisan thing. A revolution influences everybody. The people who are in the Republican Party who want constitutional government, the people in the Democratic Party who wants to protect civil liberties and a sensible foreign policy, the independents and those who dropped out, and then that large number of young people coming into the voting age now, and that is what we're seeing. I remember very well because it occurred in 1971 when I got much more interested in politics, because in 1971, when Nixon closed the gold window and acknowledged that we could not sustain a gold standard, he also made the statements, we're all Keynesians now, which meant, let you know about that guy. No, and what he was confirming, which was true, all the Democrats and all the Republicans to that point were endorsing the Keynesian economic theory because they had been around, so it infiltrated the whole electorate. And today, that is what we have to do. So yes, it's very important that we run for office, run for as Republicans, run in other parties if you want to or have to, but run to win and show that the message is acceptable and the people will accept that message and support that message. And eventually, we will and can change the entire country. And this is what we have to do.
Yeah!
You know, I ask so many people, some young people, you know, just why is it that you find support for this message? And I generally get different answers. But there was a neat little clip on the internet today. A young lady was explaining, and it's actually why she thought young people supported this revolution. And it was mainly that they have been inspired to study and read and understand what our history is all about, what economic policy is all about, what a sensible, non-interventionist foreign policy is all about. And the answers don't come strictly politically, but the answers come through the political process of looking into it and studying and understanding and getting the ammunition. But some people say that, you know, it's good. I think some people say it's only education. Other people say, no, it's only politics that counts. There's no reason why you can't think both counts. Just think about the founders. They were very well educated. They knew the philosophy, but believe me, they believed in political activity, political action, and they took action. So yes, it is important for the educational transit to continue, but it's also important to have political action. And that is what we're seeing today. We're seeing the political action, the people coming out, and exactly when the process climaxes and changes and say the country's different, you're way ahead of Washington, D.C., and you have to understand that, because Washington, D.C. is what we have to change, because they're not listening to us, and we need to make sure they do hear us.
Yeah! Woo!
And as frustrating as it might be to you, because the members don't seem to respond to your wishes, if your voices are loud enough and numerous enough, the Congress will change. Take, for instance, last year when we worked very hard on ending the Fed.
Yeah!
Auditing the Fed. Well, we got that bill passed in the House. The powers to be made sure it didn't get passed in the Senate.
Yeah.
But a partial audit occurred. We know more about the Federal Reserve today than we have in its past 100 years. So a lot of progress is being made, and now we have the chairman of the Federal Reserve at the point on being on the defensive. He has to hold a press conference and put spin on what he's doing. So we're making great strides. But that comes from people being active and sending a message to Washington, getting their attention. Because I don't know, you might be surprised to hear about people in Washington, a lot of them don't have firm convictions about anything. A lot of people in Washington have firm conviction that they like the job and they like to be reelected. So that makes certain that the conditions of being reelected is to do the right things and to obey the Constitution. You know, in another area we've had some pretty good success, at least relative success so far, and that was to stop the intrusion of the federal government on the internet, which needs to be protected. Stop Online Piracy Act was a direct attack on the internet. Yeah. But when the people spoke out, guess what? The majority vote melted away and they had to remove it from the House floor and the Senate floor. And that was a victory. It shows that we can have an effect. We have to be heard. But in the second breath, though, what has happened is they're coming up with a new bill. It's actually probably either worse, and they're talking about an international treaty on this. So vigilance is the name of the game. We must remain vigilant, but we have to get people to think in principles of what the government should be doing. The government should be open. We should know what the government is doing. We should protect the people's privacy. It shouldn't be the other way around. I'm afraid that's what we're doing, and I heard that so often. This was so disappointing after 9/11 that people say, oh, it doesn't bother me, we have to give up our liberties to be safe. I have a different understanding of who makes us safe. You know, if you wanted the policeman to make you safe, you have to have a policeman at the door. And you have to have, if the federal government to make us safe, they have to do the same thing. The purpose of the government and the officials, they take an oath of office not to enhance their political party or make you safe. They're to obey the Constitution is what they're supposed to do. After 9/11, I certainly understood the stress after 9/11, but not assessing and not understanding and knowing what the CIA has taught us, that if you're careless with your foreign policy, watch out, you might get blowback, and we ought to know about that. So this is what we have had to put up with. But just a couple weeks after 9/11, a bill that had been in process, they couldn't get passed because it was such an attack on our liberties, and that was the onerous Patriot Act that should have never been passed. Terrible! So what do we have now? We have a Patriot Act which repealed the Fourth Amendment, and we have TS agents that sort of treat you like a terrorist at the airports. So we have to be aware of that. And so many things are going on under the atmosphere today, because though we're winning the intellectual fight, those who have the power and those who have the wealth that they get from this power will not go away quietly. And they are going to fight, and they're going to be tenacious. And guess what? The power struggle in Washington, the pretense of the Republicans fighting with the Democrats, it isn't philosophic. It's over who gets the power and whose special interest gets the benefits. And this is the reason that right now it is recognized that there's not much to pass out anymore. We're a poorer nation. The wealth that we have is based on debt. The middle class is shrinking. They're poorer. They're losing their houses and they're losing their jobs. And we're a long way from resolving the economic crisis that has been brought on by bad fiscal policy and horrible monetary policy, and that has to change. And under these conditions, so much liberty is given up. A long time ago, it was assumed that you didn't have the right to spend your own money. But if you understand what liberty is all about, liberty comes from a creator, comes to us in a natural way. So if your life and liberty is naturally yours and you own that liberty, wouldn't it be logical to assume, as the founders did, that the consequence and the production and the production of your labors should be yours? So what you produce should be yours. It should be shared with the government.
Yeah!
Which means, of course, that we need a whole generation to agree with the founders who didn't like the idea of an income tax, didn't give it to us, and we got that in the progressive era. At the same time, we got the Federal Reserve and the foreign interventionist foreign policy. because it's in the beginning, it's slow, and nobody notices. We give up a little economic liberty here and there, and eventually it doesn't help the people it was intended to help. It goes to serve entitlements to the very wealthy. That's essentially what inflation does. You print money. Whoever gets to use the money first have the benefit. But you get it last. The banks and the big corporations, the military-industrial complex, foreign governments and foreign central banks and foreign aid recipients, they get the money first. When it circulates and comes back to you, you get the inflation. And who does it hurt the most? The very people we pretend to take care of from cradle to grave. The people now who have paid into Social Security for all these years and they're on Social Security benefits, and the benefits are automatically going down. Because the purchasing power is going down and the price of everything is going up. And what does the government tell you? Oh, don't sweat it, there's no inflation out there.
Yeah.
Yet we do know that the old calculation of the CPI is about 8 to 9%. And the people who want to save the money and try to take care of themselves, what do they get when they save their money? Because the system is rigged to give the banks the money for 1%, guess what? The people who are saving want to take care of themselves, they end up with earning 1% instead of 5 or 6%. So it really crimps their styles and makes it so difficult. So the whole system has to be changed, and we have to have a better understanding of economic policy and monetary policy. We have to understand the principle of private property. We have to have an understanding of contract rights. And these are just basic fundamentals of a free society. But once it's designed to help certain groups, it ends up those who have the biggest clout get to be the recipients. So we have to address that in a structural way. We have to address the subject of personal liberty in a structural way. Because if it is our lives and our liberty and the fruits of our labor belong to us, it means that individuals, if you're allowed to keep what you earn and you assume responsibility for yourself, you're allowed to make your own mistakes, but you're not allowed to put your mistakes on your neighbor. You can't dump it on somebody else. You have to assume that responsibility.
Yeah.
Now, even though it's been gradual, we have delivered so much of that responsibility to our federal government and a lot to our state government that people will be taken care of from cradle to grave. And people have a right to medical care and a right to education, a right to a job, and a right to a house. Those aren't rights. And if you think they're rights, then we're very much misled. You have a right to your life. You have a right to your liberty. You don't have a right when the government says, we can give you this and it's for free. On TV not too long ago, there was actually a British citizen that was interviewing me. He said, well, in England, we get free medical care. I said, there's no such thing as free medical care. There's no such thing as free, free stuff. You have to take it from somebody to give it to somebody else. That whole system would be hard to argue against if they actually took care of the poor and nobody else benefited, the poor were helped and the economy thrived. But of course what happens is the special interest gets the deal, the poor get poorer, and it doesn't work. And this is why we live in a very special era right now. And it's been going on for 4 years, and this is why there's so much excitement about addressing these problems. Because we were the wealthiest and we lived off our wealth. We had good credit. Our credit is not so good anymore, and they still trust our dollar. But that is starting to be lost. People having less confidence in the dollar, and the world has everything invested, including the Chinese. You've got to keep that dollar going because they're holding so many dollars. But economic law is more powerful than all the central banks of the world and all the politicians, and economic law will dictate the value of currency no matter what they produce in statistics. And we're in this process right now. It's very, very dangerous. We're at the biggest debt bubble in the history of the world. We are the biggest debtor in the history of the world. It's never been as pervasive, and it's based on this idea of the fiat dollar. And this is what I sensed in the early 1970s when the dollar was king, but there was no more linkage, no more restraints whatsoever on the production of dollars, which ushered in this age of big government spending and deficits and bringing this mess to us now. So what is the correction for this? Well, all these things could have been prevented if we had only sent individuals who actually read the Constitution, understood it, and had obeyed the Constitution.
Yeah! In the face!
Washington make sure they do know about the Constitution and take that oath of office very seriously. As president, I would never legislate through the executive order because it's illegal.
President Paul! President Paul! President Paul! President Paul! President Paul!
But as president, an executive order to repeal all the illegal executive orders would be permissible. And of course, the executive order by our current president says that he has the authority on his own to assassinate American citizens. We'll repeal that one for sure. Just a couple of weeks ago, he issued another executive order. He amended on his own the Defense Production Act, which has been sitting around on the desk for a long, long time, since 1950, saying the president can declare a national emergency and socialize everything, banks and all industries. The authority is there if he declares an emergency. It hasn't been used, but Obama just changed this to say that he can have this authority not just in times of war, but in times of peace as well. At the same time, the federal government, under the Department of Homeland Security, ordered one half a billion rounds of ammunition. We're not supposed to even have a federal police force. We've already, I used to know the number, was 100,000 federal officials carried guns to enforce all the regulations. Now with the Department of Homeland Security, it's probably a lot more. We're not supposed to have that type of police force. We're not supposed to have a police state. We're supposed to be living in a free state and in a republic. But they're all based on this idea of liberty, protecting the individual. Foreign policy is the same way. If you don't have a right to go into your neighbor's house and tell him how to spend his money or tell him how he should run his personal life, why in the world do we assume that we have the moral authority, the constitutional authority, or the money to go around the world telling them how to run their country? I say, and of course, this is an area where we are winning the fight because statistically, I think the other Republican candidates from the beginning up until now have all taken the position that we need more militancy overseas, not less. But I tell you, the money's running out, so it will end. We know that. We didn't have to fight the Soviets, thank goodness, but the Soviets lost for economic reasons. Right now, our greatest threat is here domestic. Our greatest threat to our liberties is here at home. What country would dare invade this country? We have the most powerful military in the world. Nobody would dare invade us. In some ways, we're overprotected. We spend more money than everybody else put together. We have more weapons than everybody else put together. But the real threat to our liberties are domestic, and the constitutional oath to office protects and takes care of that. We're supposed to defend against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Yeah.
So when our Congress adds to the problem of the executive orders of the president by giving him legislation like National Defense Authorization Act, which repeals posse comitatus and says the military can arrest American citizens and put them in a prison that's secret and no lawyer. And that is what we have. Now, that bill is horrible, but it actually could have even been worse. There was one provision in there, I just have trouble even believing that they have gone this far. They sort of snuck a provision in there that said that if an American citizen is arrested and given a trial, he was found innocent, the federal government could pick him up and put him in prison for life anyway in a secret prison. After being considered innocent, they claim that they can do that. But there was a young senator from Kentucky oh, we don't know how that got in there.
Yeah.
And no, that doesn't sound like a good idea. And some of the ones that just hours before was promoting it said, oh yeah, I guess we better take that out. But that is what it takes. Vigilance from all of us of what's going on. And even back to this internet, the vigilance has to be continued because they have more laws prepared, and we have an international treaty at the United Nations. They're trying to take over internationally control of the internet, as well as the monetary system. They know what we know about the fragility of our monetary system, and they're making their plans, but believe me, they're not the plans of the Constitution. It's not gold and silver, it's fiat money run by the United Nations and the IMF. But the answers are rather clear. We had a wonderful, wonderful introduction to the concept of liberty. We had the best system, the best Constitution, flawed though, obviously, but at least it granted a maximum amount of liberty. We had the freest and the wealthiest country ever. But I do not believe we can say this now. The statistics are starting to show that we are not the wealthiest country. We're the largest debt in the world. You can't be the wealthiest country anymore. So, and the production is going down. So this to us, all of us, should mean that we have to change this. We have to get people's attention, which means that we have to make sure that people know exactly what we're doing and why we're doing it, why it's in their best interest. People went along with the entitlement welfare system for years because they believed it was in their best interest. But I'll tell you what I think is in your best interest: your individual freedom and your own responsibility. Governments assume the responsibility of taking care of yourself or individuals. It doesn't work. They can only do that by taking away your liberties, and that to me is in crisis proportion right now. So we have to understand where we've been, what we have, compared to the Soviet system collapsing, going back to a Russian system. They've had their problems, but they did not have the traditions that we have. We had a good constitution. We had sound money, we had property rights, we had individual liberty, we had the Second Amendment, and we don't need to go back in a static sort of way. We need to go back to the point where they started allowing these liberties to be eroded. Pick up the pieces and improve upon it. This is a new experiment. Liberty is new and young yet. We don't want to give up so soon, and right now, if we do not get hold of this, we will have given up on this grand experiment. And this is where I'm optimistic. I think this is what is happening. People realize now that it is so necessary out of our own self-defense, but more importantly than that, even the economic reasons. I just want to live in a free society. Even if I were a poorer person, I'd want to live in a free society. The wonderful thing is, if you fight for freedom, you automatically have the most prosperous society as well. If the concentration is on the material benefits of a free society, as we have concentrated on material benefits, and this is not to say anything negative about accumulation of wealth and being prosperous. It means if you concentrate on that and that's all you care about, then you introduce the notion that you need more government to redistribute this wealth to the privileged classes. And this is what has happened. So what we want to do, of course, is free up the society so that we can all be wealthy. The whole idea that we get accused so often of saying, well, you don't care about the poor, you don't want to have socialized medicine, you don't want to give everybody a free house, and on, that we don't care about the poor. But just think of the people that were supposed to get houses, you know, in the housing bubble, which we knew would burst. I mean, it didn't help the poor. They're the ones who lost the jobs, and they lost their houses, and the wealthy got bailed out. So it doesn't work. And that is why we have to understand and trust the free market system, and why individual rights are the most important. And we have a task before us, but I believe very sincerely we're making great progress. Now, the other wonderful thing about the message of liberty is it's not divisive. Some people say, oh no, they're up there fighting and killing each other, and one side wants more freedom, the other side wants more government. That's not true. they're fighting over power.
Yeah.
But we should be arguing about it over influence of good ideas and right ideas. That's what we should be. That's what we should be talking about. Freedom brings people together as long as we get people who want to be free. Now, if they want to be taken care of, cradle to grave, and think they can live off their fellow man and do well, that's not going to work. But that's going to end because they know we're broke. So even those on the receiving end know that something has to change. But the reason it really brings people together is I do believe that the logic prevails in the end. And the reason we come together with the freedom message is we don't tell people what to do with their freedom.
Yeah.
You get to decide. You get to decide your lifestyle. You get to decide what you eat, smoke, and drink. You get to know how to spend your own money. You know, it's your money. So people should come together. We understand this pretty well with religious liberty. We accept in this country, even though at times with political correctness things get out of hand, but basically most Americans understand we have freedom of religion. You go to any church you want, and you can also not go to church if you don't want. But that's the way it should be across the board on your personal habits, your economic liberties, just like religious liberties are. And for that reason, people who are interested in liberty should be very diverse. And I am very pleased that the support of the campaign is very diverse. You know, last week we did something, didn't make the evening news. We went to Berkeley campus. Berkeley campus, some of you are a little bit young, you don't remember what was going on in Berkeley in the 60s, and it was very controversial. They were considered left-wingers and very vicious names called about those people from Berkeley. So we went to Berkeley, and actually we had a record crowd there. We had over 8,000 people on Berkeley campus. We were at Texas A&M, which is not considered the same as Berkeley, and we had a huge overflow crowd like this, thousands of people coming out. So the message of liberty, when you realize what it is, it brings people together. So we all should fight for liberty and quit arguing about how we're going to use our liberties. But it does also involve a bit of tolerance. So the liberals who say, well, people are too dumb, they don't even know how to spend their money, so we have to spend it for them. No, you have to be tolerant people, but they have to be responsible. Let them keep their money. Maybe there'll be incentive for everybody to go to work and spend their own money under those conditions. In the same way, on the other side, some people's personal habits are not my personal habits, and I don't endorse them, but I don't have to practice them. If they don't force them on me, I'm not going to force mine on anybody else. I think that's what it is. This whole idea of personal liberty, I think, is catching on. The people back in the 1918, when they passed Prohibition, it lasted about 12 years, then they quit, they woke up. But back then, they knew that prohibition of alcohol was unconstitutional. They had enough respect to say, we have to amend the Constitution to have that much government interference. And then, of course, it was a total failure. But they woke up after 12 years. But now we didn't amend the Constitution. Now we have all these prohibitions on what we put into our bodies. Yeah. And I think drugs are detestable. I think prescription drugs are probably more dangerous than illegal drugs. I think misuse of drugs and addiction to drugs is a disease more than it is a crime. And if there are no violent acts, I mean, that's people's business. I'd like to talk you out of them and explain, but that's my responsibility to myself and to my children and my grandchildren to explain these dangers. But I am convinced that the federal war on drugs is absolutely a lot more dangerous than the illegal drugs. Yeah. No, legalizing something doesn't mean we endorse it. We don't endorse religion because it's legal. We don't endorse these things, and so that's why you have to have a more open mind. Matter of fact, the Constitution even permits the states to regulate. I mean, we have state regulation of alcohol, and young people tell me it's harder to get alcohol than it is to get marijuana, so it's not accomplishing a whole lot. But this whole idea of who's to take care of us and who's to warn us about the dangers, do we have a nanny state? What's disgusting to me is it leads to doing more irrational things. Like, we have lost our right to pick our own light bulbs. You know, this is pretty bad. We can't even go out and buy our own light bulbs. What about the right to drink raw milk? I don't think that's a big complicated. But the real tragedy there is it's an excuse to undermine our liberties, more time to search houses, break into houses, these SWAT team operations. They say there are dozens and dozens every single day in this country. And lo and behold, I'm sure you can't believe it, sometimes they go into the wrong houses and kill the wrong people. And they find that they can have the drugs. But obviously, you know, the nonviolence should be something that we should change our mind about. You take nonviolent people who use drugs 3 times, put away in prison for a lifetime. And if you put in there for a short period of time and put in with a lot more violent criminals, you come out with a much more hard criminal. There's no sense. And the one reason why I think we're really winning this, there's a certain preacher that's been well known for being absolutely opposed to this, and that's Pat Robertson. He says it's time to look at this. This drug war isn't working. So we are now bringing elements together just out of logic and persistence that we will come to our senses. And besides, it's cost about $3 or $4 trillion since the early 1970s. All money wasted, just as the wars overseas are wasted. Our national debt has gone up over $4 trillion in the last 10 years for these wars. A simple process would have prevented all this. No wars without a declaration by the Congress, and then go to war with them and get them over. Now, the one thing that I am very pleased with in our campaign is at the present time, and basically it's during the campaign, other than our governor, nobody else has been in the military. So all the candidates now are never been in the military. I've been in for 5 years. And I get tremendous support from the military as well as the veterans. And I don't think it's because I'm a veteran. I think they respect me for this, that I haven't been like some back in the 60s that avoided the draft and now promote war. They're called chicken hawks. But what I am proud of is if you add up all the money sent by the active military personnel to all the candidates through this past year, we got about 7 times more than everybody else put together. So they would like to think that if you don't support the war, you don't support the troops, you're un-American, and you don't defend our country, and I think that's a bunch of baloney. I think what we need is to defend our country. We don't need to overdo it. We don't need to ever accept this principle of preemptive war. Preemptive war is equivalent to invading and starting a war. We should defend our country, but we should never start a war. Let us be optimistic that the revolution is well on its way. It's growing by leaps and bounds. We don't know exactly what will happen, but you can make a difference in the election in Texas, and everything that you do from here on out. Be engaged, understand the issues. People will use you in one way or the other, but we all have a responsibility. And this is where I'm optimistic, with the people coming together, the young people and those who have felt disenfranchised for so long. The necessity is obvious. The failure is around us, the economic failures and the foreign policy failures and the debt that we're facing. But we have the facilities and we have the understanding, and now we have the enthusiasm to once again bring about changes that will bring us the peace and prosperity that has made America